Authorities are investigating the death of Gene Hackman and his wife, and they're offering a new timeline about when she died.
If Betsy passes away and then Gene, his will, in a sense, would become void because the individual he wanted his items to be passed to,
American actor Gene Hackman, along with his wife Betsy, have been found dead in their home in New Mexico.
Tonight, authority actor Gene Hackman died of heart disease, complicated by advanced Alzheimer's. The 95-year-old alone for several days after his wife Betsy Arakawa in a home.
I can tell you that he was in an advanced state of Alzheimer's, and it's quite possible that he was not aware that she was deceased.
Something about Gene Hackman's death doesn't add up. A Hollywood legend, gone at 95, but the details? Strange. His wife died just days before him. The FBI got involved. A housekeeper vanished. And his body wasn't found for 9 days. Coincidence? Or something much darker? Stay tuned, because this story is far from over. Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa lived peaceful lives. No red carpets, no big conversations, just peace and quiet. But in February 2025, something strange happened. Betsy was the first to die. There wasn't much news or public attention. Then, just 7 days later, Gene passed away. His body wasn't found until February 26, exactly 9 days after the last signal from his pacemaker. He may have been dead for days before anyone even knew. That's interesting, right? Just 1 week separated their deaths. No one saw it coming. The timeline didn't make sense. After Betsy died, no one knew what was going on in their house. Then, silence. Gene's heart stopped beating on February 17, but no one found him until February 26. For almost a week, that was a crime scene. Who was watching the house? Where were their friends? Their family? No one noticed for days that a Hollywood legend was gone. When the police finally got involved, their report was simple and natural causes. Gene had heart troubles and Alzheimer's. But what about Betsy? Her cause of death was only listed as unspecified. Authorities said there was nothing suspicious. The sheriff of Santa Fe County looked for signs of stress. There were none. Carbon monoxide poisoning? No evidence of that. No signs of a break-in or struggle. 2 people died one after the other. An unfortunate tragedy, according to officials. But was that really the case? Even though the reports answered some questions, they raised even more. Gene had Alzheimer's. After Betsy died, could he have survived alone for a week? Why didn't someone check on him? Why did it take 9 whole days to find him? Even if no crime was committed, something felt off. The world mourned first. Fans honored Gene Hackman, sharing clips of his best performances. He was a legend, a 2-time Oscar winner, and a defining force in Hollywood. At first, it was just sadness. Then, the whispers began. People remembered how private Gene and Betsy had been. They were rarely seen in public and lived far from the press. They didn't use social media. That made their deaths feel even stranger. 2 deaths in a week? Found because of a pacemaker's last signal? A housekeeper who vanished? Fans weren't buying the natural causes explanation. Theories spread online. Was there more to the story? The biggest question was the wait. It took 9 days to find Gene Hackman. How was that possible? His heart stopped on February 17, so he almost certainly died that day. Yet, no one checked on him until February 26. Where were their friends? Their staff? The strangest part was 2 people dying of natural causes just days apart. Possible? Yes. Common? Not exactly. If Gene had Alzheimer's, could he have taken care of himself after Betsy died? If not, did he die because no one was there to help? Or did someone want them gone? And what about Betsy? Why was her cause of death left blank? Gene's death made sense, heart disease. But Betsy seemed to be in good health. That made the situation even harder to explain. If she had a health issue, why wasn't it made public? Officials found no proof of foul play, but fans weren't convinced. It wasn't just about how long it took for people to notice they were dead. It was the strange silence surrounding their home. A hidden story, buried under unexplained events. Then, there was Leslie Hackman. Gene Hackman's daughter, Leslie, quickly found herself under scrutiny. When news of her father's death broke, people noticed something odd. Instead of mourning with family, she did the opposite. She avoided questions, dodged the police, and even lied on TV. At first, she acted upset. Then, she spoke about his death as if it wasn't a big deal. As if that wasn't suspicious enough, she immediately hired a private lawyer and cut off contact with relatives. Then, the strangest part, Leslie was seen dining happily with her sister at Denny's the day after Gene's death was announced. No tears. No signs of loss. Nothing. For someone who had just lost their father, it seemed strange. People noticed. She was hiding something. Leslie wanted the world to believe her father was fit and active. She told reporters he stayed in great shape with Pilates and yoga. But that didn't match the facts. Gene Hackman had a history of heart problems. His health had been declining for years. The official cause of death was Alzheimer's and heart failure. If he was as healthy as Leslie claimed, why did he die so suddenly? She seemed shocked and sad one moment, then indifferent the next. She called his death normal for someone his age. People began to wonder, was she hiding something? Or was she just grieving in a strange way? Then came another contradiction. Leslie said she and her father were very close, but later admitted they hadn't spoken in months. How could she say they were close when they hadn't talked in so long? Why didn't she express any regret? People expected sadness, loss, or even peace. But Leslie's behavior suggested something else, indifference, maybe even guilt. It didn't add up. The investigation turned toward her financial situation. Gene Hackman had built an enormous fortune over decades in Hollywood. His wealth was massive: real estate, stocks, cash, luxury cars, private investments. And Leslie? She was drowning in debt. Neighbors whispered about her constant need for loans. Some even claimed they had seen her arguing with Gene about money. Not small disagreements, full-blown screaming matches. Her spending habits were reckless. Fancy dinners, expensive vacations, designer clothes she couldn't afford. She was living like a millionaire without being one. And it caught up with her. Reports surfaced of creditors hounding her. She was on the edge of bankruptcy. Then, suddenly, Gene changed his will. For years, his son Christopher was the main heir. It made sense, Christopher was responsible, the one Gene trusted. But weeks before Gene's death, everything changed. The new will placed Leslie at the top. Christopher was nearly erased. The timing was suspicious. Around the same time, neighbors saw Leslie visiting Gene more than usual. Late-night visits. Heated arguments behind closed doors. Then, just like that, the new will appeared. Christopher was furious, but the papers were legal. Leslie had won. Then, the biggest red flag, Gene didn't just change his will. He also moved a lot of money. Bank records showed large transfers before his death. His death, hundreds of thousands disappearing. And guess where they were going? Leslie-linked accounts. The payments weren't random. They were just small enough to avoid raising alarms. But they added up. Over time, they totaled millions. It was like someone was siphoning his fortune, slowly, carefully, making sure no one noticed. And here's the kicker, Gene wasn't making these transactions himself. His bank flagged them as unusual activity. Some were even made when Gene was too sick to leave the house. Who had access to his accounts? Who knew his passwords? Who was visiting him all the time in those last few weeks? Leslie. It wasn't just the money, either. Friends close to Gene noticed other strange behavior. He started forgetting things. He seemed confused in conversations. His health was declining faster than expected. Some wondered if Leslie was doing more than just handling his finances. Was she influencing him? Controlling him? Drugging him? Some reports even suggested that Gene had voiced concerns to close friends. He had told one of them that he felt off lately. That something wasn't right. That he was worried about someone taking advantage of him. But before he could do anything about it, he was gone. Leslie was in trouble. She had no money. She was desperate. Then, suddenly, Gene changed his will in her favor. His accounts started draining. And just like that, he was dead. It was all too perfect. Some believed she planned it. That she pushed him to change the will, made sure the money started moving, and then got rid of him before he could change his mind. But others thought it was even darker. That she didn't just manipulate him, she forced him. That she pressured, tricked, or even drugged him into signing away his fortune. Because when the money's that big, the stakes are that high, and someone's that desperate, anything is possible. And Leslie wasn't done yet. The official story was simple: Gene Hackman died of natural causes. The autopsy pointed to heart disease and complications from Alzheimer's as the culprits. On paper, it made sense. He was a man with a history of heart trouble. But for those who knew him, something about it didn't feel right. The timing was too convenient. The circumstances were too strange. Then there was Betsy. She died just a week before Gene. That's 2 deaths, in the same house, within days of each other. Coincidence? Maybe. But some people weren't so sure. Theories started circulating. What if Gene's death wasn't natural at all? What if it was part of something bigger, something sinister? At first, it was the Mexican authorities who handled the case. They did a standard investigation, looked at the autopsy results, and closed the case. No foul play. No further questions. Gene's death was chalked up to natural causes, and Betsy's passing was ruled unrelated. On paper, that should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. The FBI stepped in. Officially, they had no jurisdiction in Mexico. So why did they get involved? Some said it was because of Gene's fortune, an estate worth nearly $100 million. Others believed it was because Gene's son, Christopher, had raised concerns. Or maybe it was the suspicious transactions in the weeks leading up to Gene's death. Large sums of money had been transferred. Accounts had been accessed at odd hours. And there was only one person with access to everything: Leslie. Leslie was questioned. She spent a full day at the police station, answering questions about Gene's final days. But in the end, she walked free. No charges. No trial. Just silence. Gene had been battling heart disease for decades. In 1990, he underwent an angioplasty. In 2012, he was involved in a near-fatal car accident that left him physically weakened. Over the years, his health continued to decline. His heart wasn't strong. If he died from heart failure, it wouldn't have surprised anyone. But Betsy? That was a different story. She had no major health conditions. She took medication for minor ailments, but nothing life-threatening. And yet, she was gone first. Her cause of death remained uncertain. No foul play was officially detected, but people close to Gene couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Gene's pacemaker recorded its last activity on February 17, 2025. That should have been the exact moment of his death. But his body wasn't discovered until February 26, a full 9 days later. How was that possible? Gene Hackman wasn't just some reclusive old man living in isolation. He had visitors. He had staff. He had family. How did no one notice that he was missing for over a week? Why didn't Leslie, the woman set to inherit everything, check in on him? And what about Betsy? She died just 7 days before Gene. 2 people, from the same household, dying in the same week, both from natural causes? It wasn't impossible, but it certainly wasn't common. Some investigators believed the timeline had been manipulated. That Gene had died earlier than reported, or that his body had been hidden. The longer it took to find him, the harder it would be to determine if anything unnatural had occurred. If someone wanted to get away with murder, they'd have to make it look like nothing happened. And Gene's heart condition? It was the perfect cover. All it would take was a small tweak to his medication. The right dose of the wrong drug. Something that wouldn't show up easily in an autopsy, especially for a man with a failing heart. There were whispers. Some believed Gene had been drugged, slowly, carefully, over time. That his medication had been altered to weaken him just enough. That whoever was responsible had counted on his heart giving out before any questions could be asked. Then there was the question of the money. The suspicious transactions. The accounts that had been accessed even when Gene was too sick to do it himself. Bank statements showed large sums being moved in the weeks before his death. Not all at once, just small enough to avoid raising alarms. But over time, those small transfers added up to millions. And there was only one person who had full access to Gene's finances, Leslie. Could she have bribed someone to cover up what really happened? Could she have paid off an investigator, a coroner, a key witness? In a case like this, money was power. And Gene's fortune had given Leslie more than enough power to make sure the truth never saw the light of day. And then there was Jack. Jack was Gene's housekeeper. He was there every single day. Cooking. Cleaning. Watching. If something unusual had happened, he would have seen it. He would have known if Gene wasn't himself. He would have known if Betsy was acting strangely before her death. But Jack wasn't talking. Neighbors recalled seeing him at Gene's house the night before his pacemaker stopped. They remembered him leaving in a hurry, looking nervous. And after Gene's body was found, Jack disappeared. No interviews. No statements. No explanations. Some believed Jack had been paid off. Others thought he was scared, too afraid to speak up. And then there were those who believed he knew exactly what had happened but was keeping the secret for his own reasons. 2 deaths. 1 fortune. Suspicious bank transactions. A revised will. A housekeeper who vanished. A son who was cut out. And a woman who walked away with everything. It was all too perfect. Some believed Gene's death was just bad luck, a tragic end to a Hollywood legend. But others? They believed something much darker had happened behind closed doors. Something planned. Something executed with precision. And if that was the case, who else was involved? But was Leslie truly guilty, or was she just an easy target? Theories ranged from cold-blooded murder to an elaborate conspiracy, or pure coincidence. Behind it all? And if she was guilty, how did she get away with it so easily? Theories swirled. Whispers spread. But there was one thing everyone agreed on: this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Gene Hackman was a Hollywood titan. For over 60 years, he ruled the big screen, playing cops, cowboys, and criminals. He won Oscars. He starred in legendary films like The French Connection and Unforgiven. Everyone knew his name. Then, in 2004, he walked away. No big announcement. No farewell tour. Just gone. He left Hollywood behind and moved to New Mexico with Betsy. He wanted peace, away from cameras and questions. No more flashing lights. No more interviews. Just quiet. And for years, that's exactly what he had, until the end. Gene had lived a long life, but no one expected the way it ended. Not like this. At first, it seemed simple. He passed away at home. Natural causes, they said. But then, the questions started. Betsy had died just a week before him. That was strange. Too strange. People started talking. People started wondering. The autopsy said his heart failed. Alzheimer's had taken its toll. But some weren't convinced. Some believed there was more to the story. The FBI got involved. Not just local police, the FBI. That's when things really got strange. Leslie, his daughter, was questioned. She stood to inherit everything. But she was released in just one day. No charges. No answers. The housekeeper, Jack, was there too. Every day. Cooking. Cleaning. Watching. But when reporters asked him questions, he said nothing. He vanished. Just like that. And then, there was the timing. Gene's pacemaker stopped on February 17th. But his body wasn't found until February 26th. 9 whole days. In a house with people coming and going. How? Neighbors said they hadn't seen him for days. Calls went unanswered. And yet, no one checked on him. No one asked questions, until it was too late. Betsy's death made things even stranger. She was healthy. No major illnesses. No warnings. Then, suddenly, she was gone. Just days before Gene. Coincidence? Maybe. But some believed it was more than that. Then there was Leslie. She had money problems. Big ones. If Gene and Betsy were both gone, she would inherit everything. Did that make her a suspect? Authorities questioned her. People whispered. But no evidence came up. No charges were filed. And Jack, the housekeeper. He had been there for years. Loyal. Quiet. But after Gene's death, he disappeared. Left the country, some said. Others believed he was paid off. Either way, he wasn't talking. Fans were devastated. This was Gene Hackman. A legend. A star. His final days should have been peaceful. Instead, they were clouded with mystery. Some say the truth will come out one day. Others believe it's already buried. And maybe, just maybe, someone made sure it stayed that way. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Click on the next video popping up on your screen for more amazing content.